I'm putting together a book called Advanced Espresso, Elements of Coffee, and I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about it and what the process has been and what the book is about. So in terms of the process, I started a lot of experiments even while I was writing my previous book, Engineering Better Espresso. And I was still publishing experiments and still working on in improvements on the Decent Espresso machine. I was finding out a lot about the Decent Espresso machine at the time. And after I got to the point where I was launching my book and actually shipping it, I thought I had a lot of new experiments that I'd been running and a deeper understanding, or really a deeper understanding of how much I didn't know. So I put together a book a year ago called The Mystery of Coffee, because I really thought, and still think, coffee is very mysterious. You know, in terms of all the experiments I've run and other people have run, it feels like we're scratching the surface to a much bigger area of coffee and a much bigger area of knowledge in terms of how to make the best coffee, or the best way to process coffee, or the best way to roast coffee. So when I was writing the book, I got about 3/4 of the way through writing that book, and I felt like I was just missing a few things, which is good that I stopped, because around that time I discovered these issues with the Decent Espresso Machine's group head, and I had a lot of explorations on trying to understand water input. And I think that's a really big issue in coffee, not just for the Decent Espresso machine, but for other machines, that isn't talked about much. So I've written quite a bit about it. I've had some videos about it, and I started pulling together this material, and I looked back at this book I had, and I said, is this the concept I want? You know, I have a lot of knowledge. I feel like I've really hit some peak performance with thermal pre-infusion, and I've been hitting really high numbers in terms of extraction yield for espresso that are not, I would not say are normal. But it's as a result of trying to gain a deep knowledge of how coffee works and how coffee extraction works. So I started putting together another book, or I guess I started another version of the same book. And I found I had to throw out the idea I had before, because what I really needed is I had the raw material, but I needed an outline. So I worked through a few concepts, and then I landed on elements and splitting coffee into different elements. So I start with 4 elements of, like earth, wind, water, and fire. In terms of what we think of like, general elements of things that behave differently from each other, not actual elements. And if I grouped what I learned by those elements, does that give a clearer picture of what's happening with coffee? And I found out it did. So that's how I structured the book. I have 4 main sections, and in each section I talk about each element. And I start with earth, and in this case I think earth is the coffee beans themselves. Most of it is focused on how they grind and how water affects them. Then I talk about wind, or gas. So carbon dioxide has a big influence on how coffee extracts. And so there's a lot of things we can do before we grind the coffee beans and after to reduce the impact of carbon dioxide, even understand the impact of carbon dioxide. Then I follow that up with talking about water flow, water input. How does water flow impact coffee? And then finally talk about fire, or thermal energy. How does thermal flows differ from water flows, and how, by better understanding thermal flows through coffee separated from water flows, can we get a higher extraction? And finally I tie it all together. I mean, it really ties in, all the other elements tie in in the section about fire. So I'm launching the book soon. And if you liked Engineering Better Espresso, or if you like my writing style, if you like my content, then this book is probably for you. But it's trying to gain a higher level insight from a very large volume of experiments and articles I've written over the past few years. In a similar way that Engineering Better Espresso was trying to distill all these experiments down to something that was more actionable and more meaningful to someone making espresso. So if you want, sign up to get notified. And when the book launches on Kickstarter, and you want to buy it, buy it. If you have any questions, reach out. So I'm thrilled to write another book. The first book writing and just all the people I met was very interesting. I met so many new friends, and I'm excited to do it again.